Hey, what's up, online community? And thanks for stopping by and checking out another segment of Straight No Chaser, where we talk sports and culture for fans, oftentimes with the fans. Now, the last couple of weeks, we've been really gaining some really good momentum because we're seeing a shift in a number of different things as it relates to social issues taking place across the country. And why not continue to have that conversation, have that dialogue? And joining me today is none other than Joshua Short. He's a member of the media. He is an anchor, a news anchor, a reporter. He's got roots here in the Chicagoland area, but now he works in Northwest Indiana. So, Straight No Chaser audience, I'd like to present to you Joshua Short. And also, I have to admit, I'm a little bit biased because Joshua was a family member, and I've seen this young man grow and evolve, both as an individual, but also a member of the media. So, Joshua, welcome to Straight No Chaser. For those fans out there that are familiar with Straight No Chaser, before we get into it, grab your favorite libation, shot, cocktail, coffee. We're about to get into it. Straight No Chaser. Salud.
Salud. I can't tell you what's in this, by the way.
You know what? Those who tell don't know, and those who know better not tell.
So, well said. Well said.
But, to that point, I think you hit it on the head. And I think, first of all, I tell people, these last 6 months have been the longest 10 years of my life. I'm serious. This feels like, think about it. We have undergone a pandemic.
Yes.
Basically, we're in the middle of a civil rights movement.
Yep.
We've had Kobe Bryant pass away, who was a huge athletic presence, and then was transitioning to things off the court. There's a lot going on. We had the Popeyes chicken sandwich fiasco.
Oh my God.
Name it.
By the way,
last 6 months has been a complete. I'm telling you.
You mentioned Popeye's chicken. It was not as promoted, in my opinion. It was not as advertised. I had a stomach ache afterwards. I can't go further than that, but it was terrible. It was terrible. You mentioned, though, you said civil rights, too. We lost 3 giants.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Edgar's, who else did we Evers, rather, we lost
Just
C.T. Vivian, and then John Lewis.
Absolutely.
This year has been crazy.
Yeah. So with that, I want to talk about some of the things because this is a carryover from the conversation that started online, that has been carried online or discussed online, and is a carry forward from a really more intensive conversation last week on social media, and talk about some of the things that we're now in the middle of. One of the things that's out there, and it's starting to really take form and take shape, and that is the removal of Confederate monuments and statues and things like that. I know that this is a controversial topic. Let's bottom it up. But let me say this: I will provide information, but also provide my opinion because I'm allowed to do so. I know the Confederate monuments have been a sticking point for years. Last week, I was challenged by multiple people on your social media platform as to why I felt the Confederate monuments needed to be removed, or why I supported the removal of Confederate monuments. Yeah. My thoughts on removal of the Confederate monuments, okay, is that you can't erase history. Someone brought up a great point. You cannot erase history. What happened with the Civil War, what happened with these individuals, their role in the Civil War, agree with it, disagree with it. Personally, I don't agree with it, but it is a part of history. However, I do not think that it should be glorified. I do not think that it should be celebrated. When you have a monument, that to me, you are viewing them as tribute. You are praising them. You are acknowledging them. For lack of a better term, you're almost worshiping them. And when you look at the Confederate monuments and the individuals who are being glorified, for individuals like myself, people of color, for individuals that were in the South, for individuals that were alive when these monuments were erected, because let's not forget, these monuments didn't go up right after the Civil War. Many of these monuments didn't go up and start going up until the 1920s and gain momentum and traction, and were really prevalent in terms of their administration and application in the 50s and 60s as the civil rights movement gained traction. So these monuments were not erected after the Civil War. They were erected as people of color gained more rights. Women, people of color, They gain more rights, they gain more freedoms, they gain more abilities. And this was a rallying point and a rallying call to a time when these individuals were oppressed. So for a person like me to look at a Confederate monument, that's what it represents, a signal of oppression. It signals violence, it signals abuse, it signals white supremacy. Let's just call it what it is.
Sure.
And I hear things such as, well, it represents Southern heritage, but really, what is Southern heritage? What would that represent? That's the challenge that I have in terms of understanding when people say this is a representation of Southern heritage. Well, under the veil of Southern heritage, what are you really saying? And that's the dialogue and conversation. Is there a place for that? If you want to hold on to that piece of Southern heritage, removing my personal opinion from it, I feel that possibly that can go into a museum, that can go into some type of archive, some type of viewing location. I don't know what that looks like, but I think to have that on full display in the monumental status where, it's glorified, it's the objectification of this individual, I just don't feel that that's appropriate. But again, those are just my thoughts. What are your thoughts?
I love this conversation because you hit every nail on its head, I think. To a point that people don't realize things that, you mentioned the purpose of the statue. They weren't put up right after the Civil War. These were put up during times of huge, significant strife among the people who felt that they were oppressed. And so some would argue that was a response to the marches, to the screams, And we talk about it all the time, and you've heard me talk about this conversation of the response itself says a lot about the person or the people. It's if you are believing in a cause, what's your need to respond? Why do you need to respond in the way that you do?
Yes.
Black Lives Matter and things like that. Now we're seeing everything. It's like you see Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. Of course they do, but you're responding in a way that we're not saying that does not matter.
Yes.
We're just saying us too, right? And so when we saw those statues erected, the reasons behind why they were erected, and the Confederate flag itself, and you talked a lot about that last week,
yes.
Ruffled some feathers too, and I think justifiably so. It was the reason that was created. That flag was created for a reason. Look in the documents, and I'm talking about factual stuff here. None of this is opinion.
Yes.
You look into the history of this flag and the generals who created it and why, and you will see explicitly slavery, ownership of another group of people, the oppression of other people. There was a reason behind that flag. And so when you say this is a cultural thing, well, you have to acknowledge the culture that was represented during that time as well.
Yes.
People say, oh, I keep this picture because it's an homage to the 60s. Well, everybody's like, okay, well, if you're paying tribute to the homage of the 60s, you're a racist. No, that doesn't mean if I have a candle from the 60s, that means I'm endorsing racism. But the flag was different. The flag was based on racism. The candle wasn't. So I don't know. That's my opinion on it. If I do upon anything.
And to your point, from a factual standpoint, the actual Confederate flag that's being flown now is not the quote Confederate flag, or one of the first 2, maybe 3 iterations of the Confederate flag, so to speak. This is another piece of lore that was added to as a rallying call,
to justify people's opinions.
Yes. So
that's so true.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you hear when you have these conversations, because I try and rationalize, because again, I choose information over affirmation. I try and remove my emotions from it and try to process the information. But when you process the information based off of the facts, it just doesn't add up. I know there's going to be some challenges on that, but I have not heard anything factual to the contrary yet. And that's that's for me one of the biggest sticking points when I have these conversations, for me to be able to see that vantage point. And because I like to be open-minded, I don't know it all, but what I do know, I'm confident in. And if I just haven't seen anything different.
It's kind of like people create their, and I'm sliding the coronavirus here, but it's making this connection of how people, no matter what facts are out there and the information is out there, if it doesn't affirm your belief, then you're going to stick with what you think is right, or what you assume to be facts, which it's not. And one of those things like the coronavirus, people are talking about these masks, that being a big issue.
Yeah.
And one of the things, particularly that I was reading, that caught me off guard is when people talk about okay, you have a mask mandate. There are certain exclusions, and particular exclusions of, the mask mandate may be underlying health conditions. And now all of a sudden you're seeing people who are healthy as a grain of rice. And then you say, oh, you look fine. You sound fine. Yeah, but I have an underlying condition. Well, what is that condition? And they'll go into detail of whatever it is. Oh, you have asthma. Well, I just saw you smoking on your porch yesterday. So you have asthma. But help me understand that. And then now people, you got American Airlines coming out, I believe it's American, who said, listen, underlying health conditions, we're not going based off that. If you have one, maybe you shouldn't fly.
See,